Welcome back to Ghostman and Rivera's Horror Show podcast. We have returned after 2 years of being off the airwaves and out of your ear holes.
This is our first one back. So we wanted to discuss some horror films that we watched in 2024, this one. And then the next one, we're going to discuss The Dead Place.
Yeah. We've been pretty busy working on The Dead Place, Michael Pickle's debut feature. And in a couple weeks, you're going to hear all about that. But today, we're each going to be tackling our top 12 horror movies of 2024 because it was too hard to wrangle in it to 10. And even then, it was pretty difficult to get it to 12. So we're going to get started first with some honorable mentions.
Yeah, it was very hard to get it to 12. And we did 7 honorable mentions. And still, there was about 50 movies this year that I really liked. So any of these movies could, and I even feel bad that some of them didn't make my honorable mentions list, but some of them had to go. My first honorable mention is Milk and Cereal. It's a found footage movie exclusively on YouTube. It's written and directed by Curry Barker. Very good found footage film, very good film, period. I thought it was going to make my top 10, but there was so many great movies this year that it got bumped down. My number 2 honorable mention, could have easily made my top 10, is Abigail. It's directed by Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillett, who did Ready or Not and the Scream reboot. Excellent little vampire movie.
Also known as Radio Silence.
Yeah, Radio Silence. And Dan Stevens makes an appearance. I love that guy. He was hamming it up in this one. And Dan Stevens makes another appearance in my list. You'll see later. And then my number 3 honorable mention is Hellhole, from the Addams Family, written and directed by John Adams and Toby Poser. Great, quirky, original, nothing like the rest of their films. It felt really fresh and funny. I loved Hellhole. And big surprise for me this year, my number 4 honorable mention is Smile 2, written and directed by Parker Finn, who directed the first one. I thought it was a big improvement over the first one. So that one's a really solid one. Great sequel. And speaking of great sequel, my number 5 is Alien Romulus. Had a great theater experience with this one. I thought for sure it was going to make my top 10, but it did not. It's my number 5 honorable mention. It's written and directed by Fede Alvarez and co-written by his partner Rodo Sayagues, who always does his movies with him. That was another excellent sequel. Number 6 was a great little monster movie, Arcadian, with Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage also makes an appearance in my top 12 list this year. Directed by Benjamin Brewer. He was the head of visual effects on Everything Everywhere All at Once. So and it was written by producer Mike Nyland. That's a great little charming monster movie. And my last honorable mention is Mads. It's a French film written and directed by David Moreau, who directed Them in 2006 and directed The Eye remake with Jessica Alba in 2008. A great little French film that's one take. I didn't know it until after I watched it, so I was already impressed by it, just the visceral nature of it. But then after I watched it and realized it was all one take, I was very impressed with it. So that is my number 7. Mads.
Okay, so there are 2 movies. I'm not going to name them right now because I don't want to spoil, but there are 2 movies on there that will be on my top 10, and we'll discuss them a little bit more in detail when we get to it. So my honorable mentions is set up different. I kind of did it as if it were like 20 counting up to 10. So I'm going to cheat here. I'm going to be honest with you. My number 20 is a tie between Exhuma and The Vorderlack. Exhuma was written and directed by Jang Jae-hyun. I'm probably mispronouncing it. Very good. A lot of a lot of these Korean horror movies have been pretty impressive lately, and this was another one.
Yes.
The Vorderlack is another foreign film that I enjoyed very much. This one was European. The Vorderlack is basically. Did you get to see that by any chance, Michael? I have to ask you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The Vorderlack, there are some flaws with the movie. It could have ended up being a top 10 if it had done a few things differently. but I liked the character of the Vorderlack. Apparently, the Vorderlack is a mythological creature that predates the vampires, and it's very vampiric. But there's some key differences, and I thought it was a pretty fascinating take on a little piece of mythology. My number 19 was Azrael. Really good silent.
That's a
Yeah,
great
yeah.
one.
See, Azrael was directed by Al Katz, and it's basically, in my opinion, it kind of does what the Quiet Place movies claim to do, but actually fail. Where there's actually a full-on silent movie where nobody talks, nobody says anything, and it's like a perfect example of what you can achieve as a filmmaker if you concentrate only on the visuals. The movie's not lacking in emotion, it's not lacking in storytelling, it's not lacking in energy, it's not lacking in drive. I thought it was a very, very entertaining movie.
And starring
um,
Samara Weaving, who's really animated type of star. So it's great to see her in a silent role, and she nailed it.
Oh yeah, Samara Weaving. I'm used to her playing more of like sweet, likable characters, and in this movie, I thought it was interesting because even though your sympathies are with her throughout the movie, the longer it goes on, and by the time it ends, and this is not really a spoiler, you're left wondering if she was actually the good guy the entire time through this movie, and if you should have been cheering for her. And it leaves you with the feeling that in the end, that maybe the antagonists that you've been rooting against the whole time were actually the good guys, and I kind of like that. So I
Yeah.
think it's much fresher than Quiet Place. My number 17 is Cuckoo, and this one is directed by Tillman Singer. Very interesting because Tillman Singer directed Loose, which ended up making I think it was my number one movie in 2020 when we did our top 10 horror movies of 2020. I had been waiting for this movie for a very long time because I don't think anybody likes Lose as much as I do. I've met so many people and I've tried to see, and there's people who like it, or even people that vibe to it don't enjoy it as much as I do. So I was really looking forward to this movie, and I did really enjoy it. And it's weird to say this about an honorable mention, but because I loved Lose so much, I was just a little bit disappointed with this movie. Just a little bit because it is a bigger budget. It is a much more I don't know how to put it. It's a more accomplished piece of filmmaking in so many ways, but I like the limitations of Loose. Loose, there was something very magical about it. Regardless, Cuckoo was a very entertaining movie, and I think Hunter Schafer gives a very strong performance.
Yes.
I think she's gonna be around for quite a while because I really like her on Euphoria, and I liked her on this as well, playing a character that's nothing like her character on Euphoria. So I'm guessing this is on your top 10 somewhere. You don't have to answer that. My next honorable mention is The First Omen. This one was a surprise because I did not expect to like an Omen sequel this much because most of the Omen sequels, especially the remake and all that, have been crappy over the years. This basically does what Immaculate with Sydney Sweeney, another Euphoria actress. It does what Immaculate tries so desperately to do but fails. And what's very interesting is Immaculate, in all honesty, I would think that would be the one that I prefer because it's an indie horror film from Neon. But alas, the mainstream franchise movie, The First Omen, takes the same concept, does it with better storytelling, better direction, better visuals, more complexity, more depth of characters. Just it's overall just a much more interesting film, and it makes Immaculate look very basic. So I'm very sorry for all you Immaculate fans out there. Yeah, a lot of horror fans really loved Immaculate, and I just didn't see what the big deal was.
Yeah,
My
it's
next,
too simple for me.
yeah, too simple for me too. My next one is All You Need Is Death, directed by Paul Duane. This is either this is what is this, Sweden or Denmark?
Ireland.
Ireland. Whoa, way off. Really stupid right now. I apologize. Okay, start over. So yeah, my next one up is All You Need Is Death, directed by Paul Duane from Ireland. I really like this movie because I thought it was a very interesting piece of folk horror that sticks inside your head. And originally, this wasn't going to make my honorable mentions, but as I was putting my list together, I noticed that at the time, even though I enjoyed it, it wasn't one of my favorites. It stuck in my head more than movies that I thought I preferred, and it's kind of like you know it's like you know how as time goes on you have a certain view on a movie, but all
Yeah,
the other ones start to fade, and for some reason that sticks in my mind, and I think this because there's something very strange and unique about it. It has a very eerie, ethereal quality that I can't quite put my hands on, and it feels simultaneously like a classic folk horror story and nothing like any folk horror film I've ever seen before. Uh,
love that one.
yeah, love that one. Almost done with my honorable mentions. The next one up is Oddity. This one was directed by Damien McCarthy. A really quick synopsis: after the brutal murder of her twin sister, Darcy goes after those responsible by using haunted items as her tools for revenge. I thought this was a very carefully crafted, very suspenseful, very well directed, very eerie film, and I thought it succeeded in doing everything that it set out to accomplish to do. And in a lesser year of horror movies, it might have made my top 10, which just is a sign of how good the horror movies were here. And now
Same here.
yeah, my last honorable mention, and this was very hard to keep off the list, um, is The Coffee Table. This was a Spanish movie, and I have a feeling Mike is going to have this a higher on his list, so we'll talk about it more later because I do have a lot to say about this one. By Kay Casas. Jesus and Maria are a couple going through a difficult time in their relationship. Nevertheless, they had just become parents. To shape their new life, they decide to buy a new coffee table, a decision that will change their existence. I'm so going to say about this one, it's probably not what you expect it to be, and it literally upended my expectations through the entire runtime. Very, very fresh movie, fresh concept, very well executed. And that ends my honorable mentions list.
So you got about 4 or 5 on your honorable mentions that are in my top 12.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm interested to see where those are. I have a well, we'll get to it. Okay, I have a feeling that you liked Cuckoo more than I did, which is kind of crazy because that was like a really big, really a movie that I was really, really anticipating more than almost anything else other than Nosferatu this year.
Yeah, I absolutely love that one. And I saw it really late. So it entered my list late, but
Okay,
it's up there for sure.
for sure. All right, so let's get kick it off. What's your number 12, Mr. Michael?
So my number 12 was on your honorable mentions. All You Need Is Death.
Okay,
Uh, I watched it initially and it was the same thing. It was down past my honorable mentions, and the more I thought about it, it kept moving through my honorable mentions. And then I decided to watch it again, and it holds up very well on a second watch, so I moved it into my top 12. Like you said, written and directed by Paul Duane. He was a documentary filmmaker, and this is his first narrative feature film. It's Irish folk horror starring Simone Collins and Charlie Maher. It's one of the first features for both of these actors. And Olwen Fiore, I think this is her best. She was the white-haired lady who was in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022 and said, "Leave their face."
oh
And
yeah.
she was in The Watchers this year, which I didn't like that much. She was in Mandy and also in The Northman, but I think this is her best performance. Not her best movie, but her best performance, I think. The synopsis: a young couple who are part of a secret organization travel at night with the desire to discover forbidden knowledge. They believe that living modern alchemy is contained in old forgotten songs, and when they find an elderly, mysterious woman who sings songs that have never been heard before, they open the door to an ancient evil and madness. I thought this one was so original, felt so fresh. Every Almost every scene was surprising to me, and it moved forward very well from scene to scene. And it was a little over $150,000 budget, and I thought that budget was used very well. I thought it was higher, but it does have a low budget feel, but it has a low budget indie spirit to it, not the cheapness. I didn't see a low budget anywhere in that movie.
Who is the director of this
Um,
again?
it is written and directed by Paul Duane. He's a documentary filmmaker.
Okay, so that's one thing I wanted to mention. I was unaware of that, but now that I know that Paul Duane is a documentary filmmaker, I think I kind of get the vibe of the movie more. It has a I don't know how to describe it. It has a sense of realism, a very natural sense of realism to the movie. and it makes sense that it would come from the aesthetic of a documentary filmmaker. And I think that's part of what makes it so effective is you feel like you're just watching something happening. You're not watching a movie.
Yeah, the way it's explored, the way the folklore is explored is almost like a documentary. It's very informative by while being entertaining at the same time. And then I love it. I loved it right from the beginning. I noticed on the second watch that it does a lot of what it does in the beginning, which is singing. They use singing to set the mood. Just one person singing. Sometimes they mix it with score to for more effect, but a lot of times it's just a single solitary voice singing these strange songs. So it sets the mood right from the first scene, and something about it, a single voice singing a strange song, gives you a real weird mood. Uh, and then we establish how important these songs are to people and how important it is to them not to record them, not to have a recorded history of it, that it has to be passed down from generation to generation. And also another effect they did with the singing, where you hear the person singing in the next scene. Like the singing will come up in a scene, and then that it kind of bleeds into the next one. So they kind of use the singing to uh, kind of drive home the mood of the scene previous, and then you see in the next scene that's where the singing is coming from. They did that about 4 or 5 times in the movie. I thought it was really effective.
Yeah, very good one. I really enjoyed that movie.
And when it really started to grab me is when they went to that seminar about where the woman was teaching them how to hunt these songs, and the main actress, the lead actress, sang one of the strange songs. I thought that was when it really grabbed me. It already had me then, but right then I thought, okay, this has some layers to it, and it has some real
It has
like an
emotion
ancient,
behind it.
yeah, and like an ancient feeling to it. You can feel the heaviness and the importance of these songs when they're sung. Um, I loved all the lingering sequences of the couple traveling through remote areas at night to find the singers. It's a great score that slowly builds. It's a sense of impending doom throughout the whole thing, and then you see where that sense of impending doom comes up, because it's nothing but doom by the time you get to the end of it, and it makes you feel the history and the heaviness of these songs. And then I love the main song sung by the old lady. It's a love is a knife with a blade for a handle. It kind of sounds like giallo, but it's in a language that dates back before the written word, and it has a black glove killer and everything. So I love the little callbacks to giallo throughout it. And I love the sequence when they sing this cursed song, because the woman is singing the song, and then the audio of the song kind of bleeds into the next scene, like I talked about before, and it bleeds into them coming out affected by it, and you can really feel the eeriness of this song and how important it is. And then of course the bottle kill. And did you notice anything familiar about the bottle kill? I have a short film. My second short film was a campsite, and I have a kill almost exactly like this one, where you shove a bottle down someone's throat and then pound it until it goes down their throat.
Oh yeah, I remember exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. Uh, the singer's son is a great addition to the story. He adds even another layer of strangeness, as if it wasn't strange enough. Uh, and he explains these black smudgy shapes. Like you see the black smudgy shapes kind of haunting the movie throughout, and then the son comes in and kind of explains what these shapes are and gives the history of them. And I love how it has a lot of exposition and a lot of telling the story, but it never feels like an exposition dump. You know?
Well, I think the reason that the exposition scenes in this movie never feel like exposition dumps is because the movie is about folklore. It is about storytelling. It is about traditions being handed down. So I think it only makes sense that the characters would be telling a lot of stories in a story about handing down stories through oral tradition, through song, through memory, not writing it down. So I think that's kind of a natural fit for the subject matter too.
Yeah, and I love how mysterious the actual force. What is after them? Is it a curse? Is it a demon? Is it God? But it actually uses love as a weapon. I thought that was very original. Uh, Oh, and then right up to the end, it ends with this strange like drudge metal song, and I thought it sounded like someone dying. Like, what a great way to end this very original movie, just leaving you feeling so strange. I felt so strange throughout this whole thing, and it was the same on the rewatch.
Hmm.
So I absolutely love my number 12 is All You Need Is Death, Irish folk horror film.
Good choice. Good choice. So, interesting enough, Michael picked a number 12 movie that we both like. So, I'm going to kick off my list, which is probably going to be the most controversial one on this list. And Michael can already probably guess where this is going just by me saying that. My number 12 movie is In a Violent Nature, directed by Chris Nash. Really quick plot synopsis. Not that there's much of a plot to this movie, if I'm being honest. The enigmatic resurrection, rampage, and retribution of an undead monster in a remote wilderness unleashes an iconic new killer after a locket is removed from a collapsed fire tower that entombed its rotting corpse. So I'd say this is probably one of the most controversial horror movies of the year for horror movies specifically for of the year for any number of reasons. It's extremely slow paced by the standards of most slashers. It features almost entirely the character walking. I think it has a very hypnotic feel to it. I would describe it, and this is not really an original description, this is how most people would describe it online. It's as if Terrence Malick saw Friday the 13th and decided he wanted to make his own version of it that concentrated on the thing that interests Terrence Malick: nature, the inevitability of nature, the violence of nature. And I thought this was a really refreshing slasher movie. It has all of the cliches and tropes that you would expect out of something like Friday the 13th, but it applies an artfulness to it that I think is pretty hypnotic. And I like the portrayal of the killer as a piece of nature itself. For a while, I thought In a Violent Nature, the title of the movie, I thought it was referring to the violent nature of the killer. But the longer the movie goes on and the more it seems like these characters are trapped by a sense of an air of inevitability, I started to realize that the killer is a stand-in for nature itself. And I thought that was a very interesting take on the on it. Now, there are some things that, and I know some of the criticisms Michael's going to lob at it. They're very legitimate criticisms, and I get it. But this is one of those movies where either the approach works for you or it doesn't work for you. So let's hear what you have to say about it, Michael.
Yeah, I've kind of softened my stance since seeing it because it's one of those movies that pissed me off when I watched it. So it kind of clouded my judgment at first before I was able to think about it a little more. So what a lot of people didn't like about it, I actually liked about it. I liked all the walking through the woods, all the scenery and stuff, and then never knowing when he's going to walk up on somebody.
Hmm.
And then when he does walk up on somebody, you know he's going to end their lives. I just did not like the dumb character decisions, all the stupid banter from the characters, and then when the story of the killer starts coming in, it's all this exposition by these actors just hamming it up. And I realized that was part of it, like as a send up of slashers. It was almost like a parody of slashers.
Hmm.
But I think it would have been just as effective or more effective if they would have given us some characters that felt real or a killer that felt real, and it kind of just fizzled out for me.
Hmm. So,
But like I said, I have softened my stance on it though.
do you think if they dropped like some of the, because I have a little more to say about this, you think if they had dropped some of like the parody elements of it, you might have liked it a little bit more?
Yeah, and it was just let's say like you compared it to Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th was a lot of mundane conversations between the characters, but they felt like real people. With
Hmm.
these, it was just everybody was an asshole. Nobody was talking about or saying anything that I cared about. I just thought there was a perfect opportunity to put real characters in there that you felt something for.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's one of those movies where whether you're into it or you're not,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that it's a bad movie in any way. It's just that it things that piss me off about it. The things that it was uh, uh, paying homage to, I didn't like. It was. I don't like the stupid character decisions. I don't like mundane, unlikable characters that are just there for killing fodder.
So,
But that's what they were. It was on purpose, so I can't say too much bad about it.
So what's interesting is I actually had this movie higher on my list until I watched it again, and I still liked it quite a bit, but it came down a little bit after watching it again. I could see some of your complaints, but what I found interesting about this, and I think this is a very unique approach, is that it's kind of like you said, it's kind of sending up elements of slasher movies, the inane dialogue, the stupid banter that goes on between characters, and the fact that most of the time you don't even in the Friday the 13th movies, a lot of these old ones, you ever watch the audience members, they don't really give a shit about these characters. It's not like in Halloween where you really care about the fate of Laurie Strode and you're really into it. Most of the time, whenever I've seen Friday the 13th films, any number of them, you can watch them with audiences, and every time it seems like the audience is sitting around waiting for the killer to kill these kids, because there's a few Friday the 13th movies where the characters are interesting or likable, like something like Friday the 13th Part 4, the final chapter, Part 6 with Jason Lives. What I thought was interesting about this movie doesn't change anything about the fact that the characters are boring people, but it changes the focus of the movie. Whereas most slasher movies, we would be stuck with like listening to these characters talk endlessly and blabbing and going, okay, when is the killer going to show up? This movie sticks with the killer. As boring and as dumb as some of the conversations are, you are sticking with the killer most of the time. You are seeing his methods, you are seeing how he stalks people. And I think that's one of the things that I liked about it. One of the things that I gave it kind of its hypnotic feel is it was started off by building tension, where in a normal slasher movie where it's just trying to get to the point, you would see the killer sneak up on them and then just go to work. This one, the killer follows them around for a very long time, and he waits and he bides his time, and he doesn't strike until each character is completely isolated from each other in a way that they have no more contact or communication with each other. And I like that we were able to stick with the killer's perspective and see his hunting method, see how he hides underneath the water, see when he strikes. And it gives this sense of, goes back to what I was talking about, the sense of inevitability that these characters never stood a chance, because this person, or it's not even a person, this piece of nature is just perfectly waiting and perfectly in silence to strike just at the right time when they're completely helpless. I like that fact that this movie doesn't have any score to it, that it just uses the sounds of nature. Whereas, where I think it kind of makes up for the fact that there's no score. There's one scene towards the end of the movie where the final girl is running through the woods, and it seems like she's running in circles, but you're not sure because it's endless forest. And all of the soundtrack kind of puts up the sounds of nature, the owls, the creaking, the things that you hear off in the distance, and it kind of like exaggerates them and puts them very very loud. It gives you the anxiety of what it feels like to be trapped inside of nature. So let's be honest, when you go out camping, you are putting yourself in a vulnerable position, because we as human beings, we kind of coddled ourselves and we're used to the city, we're used to our amenities, we're used to being out in an environment that we control. We forget that the woods, the forest, that is not our domain. We do not have control over it. There's animals there. There's accidents that could happen. It's isolated from everything else, and that's one of the things that I liked about this movie. It was about the environment of a summertime slasher movie more than it was a typical slasher movie. And I feel like the director Chris Nash really internalized these things and picked up on things in summertime camp slashers, which is kind of a cliche in the horror genre, and found interesting things in that genre that most people don't emphasize. And the characters are, some of them, there's not really any likable characters, and I can't pretend that they are, but I do think that's part of the movie, and it either works for you or it doesn't work for you. So that is my number 12 in A Violent Nature.
Well, when you think about it as being from the killer's perspective, it's kind of adds to the realism that he would just walk up on these people camping and they would just be a bunch of assholes being assholes to each other, because that's the way a lot of people are.
Yeah, they are.
But so that part, even though I didn't like it, it did add to the realism in it. So why have characters stand there and wait to be killed, especially that couple?
Oh, towards the end?
Yeah.
I mean, I have a theory as to why, but I don't want to give spoilers
Uh,
to it, so cover your ears real quick. I think one of the characters intentionally sacrificed themselves. Maybe not, but that's the impression that I got off of it. So I apologize if I spoiled the movie for anybody, but
okay.
I don't think that really impacts the movie at all, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, like I said, the things I didn't like about it were deliberate, so I can't condemn it too much. I just did. I just it just pissed me off. The characters pissed me off, not the movie.
That's fair. Pretty obnoxious characters. So what is your
So
number 11?
my number 11, I can't believe it got pushed down this far, but it shows what a strong year for horror it was. My number 11 is Terrifier 3.
So I have that a little bit higher. So do you want to just give a brief, and then we'll go, or a brief synopsis of it, and then we'll talk about it more when we get to my list.
Okay, written and directed by our friend Damien Leone, starring our friend and fellow collaborator David Howard Thornton, Lauren Lavera, awesome final girl as Sienna, Elliot Fulham as Jonathan, Samantha Scafaldi returns as Victoria, Antonella Rose as Gabby, and it also had cameos by Clint Howard, Daniel Roebuck, Jason Patrick, and Chris Jericho.
Perfect.
And I'll just give a quick synopsis. After surviving Art the Clown's Halloween massacre, Sienna and her brothers struggle to rebuild their shattered lives. As the holiday season approaches, they try to embrace the Christmas spirit and leave the horrors of the past behind. However, just when they think they're safe, Art returns, determined to turn their holiday cheer into a new nightmare. So we'll talk about that more when it's higher on your list, but it's at my number 11, Terrifier 3.
Okay, so my number 11 is a movie that actually really surprised me a lot. I never would have guessed that this would have been anywhere near one of my top horror movies of the year. Was Smile 2, directed by Parker Finn. And I think this one surprised me. Anybody who knows me, who's talked or who's ever had a conversation with me about the movie Smile, knows how much I couldn't stand the first Smile movie. I thought Smile was poorly acted, the original one. I thought it was poorly written. I thought the characters were all obnoxious. And unlike in A Violent Nature, we are forced to spend a lot of time with these people and swallow the most inane, asinine dialogue. I thought the movie lacked an atmosphere. I really didn't like anything about Smile, if I'm being honest with you. I thought it was like a very clever marketing gimmick, and I didn't understand the hype behind it, and I didn't understand why so many in the horror community were declaring this like a new classic. I thought kind of reminded me of like the early 2000s horror movies when I consider like the early 2000s to be the biggest slump of any era in horror. And Smile to me felt like a leftover from that era. It's like, why are we going back to movies like this when the genre has come so far in the past 20 years? Which is why Smile 2 really caught me off guard. Quick synopsis: about to embark on a new world tour, global pop sensation Sky Riley begins experiencing increasingly terrifying and inexplicable events. Overwhelmed by the escalating horrors and the pressures of fame, Sky is forced to face her dark past to regain control of her life before it spirals out of control. So I'm going to just say this right from the get go, this movie is better than the original. The movie starts with a very intense scene. It's kind of a carryover from the last film. Very well filmed, very well executed, and bam, it's off and running. I think everything that didn't work about the original Smile works in this movie. I think the dialogue is better. I think we have much better characters to follow around this time, much more fascinating characters. I think this is a very high concept horror movie too because it is about a pop star on a global tour, a pop star who's been faced with addiction, who's had problems and who's trying to kind of like, reclaim her spot. And I thought it was a very unique approach. I liked all of the big concert sequences. I thought the tension was constantly escalating. It never let up. And there became a point in the movie, especially deep into the movie, when it was hard to tell what was real and what was only in the head of our main character because she's being messed with by these demons. And I think that kind of was to the benefit of the movie. It keeps you off balance. And I think it has a killer ending, dude. I love the ending of Smile 2, and I thought it was the perfect way to send it off. Made me think of the Taylor Swift concerts of the Eras tour and
Yeah.
how horrifying it would have been. And I'm not going to spoil if Taylor Swift did a certain thing live in front of a stadium full of packed people. But
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this movie quite a lot. I thought it was, and that's another thing. It's not a short movie too. It's about 2 hours long, and usually a movie like this, I would think should be about 90 minutes. And there's nothing here that I would have really cut. If I'm being honest with you, I thought it built its tension all the way steady till the end, and I think it follows up all the tension that it builds with a very good ending. Very solid, very satisfying, very well made. It's an improvement in every way on the first Smile, and I think it accomplishes very well everything the original failed to do. So I'm surprised to say I was a fan of Smile too.
And the presence of a movie like Trap last year really helped Smile too, because both of them feature a fake pop star.
Mm-hmm.
But this one and Smile 2 was so much more convincing. It felt so much more authentic to today's pop music. And the songs were decent. She was the actress was a convincing pop star.
Mm-hmm.
And I love some of the sequences, like I guess it was CGI, but I didn't see much CGI in it. But it was in her hotel room, or not a hotel room, I think it was her apartment, whether all those Smile creatures were gathered up on the walls. They were climbing the walls and coming down from the ceiling. That was scary as hell.
Yeah, and it was funny. There's a lot of sequences like that in the original Smile, and none of them worked for me the first time I saw it. I really
Mm.
cannot emphasize how strongly I didn't like the first one. And the actress is Naomi Scott. Um, she does a really great job in this movie because she just kind of has to carry it the whole way through. We send her, we follow her the whole way through the movie, and I like the way that the movie kind of pieces together her past very slowly, and it builds to the point where you kind of start to develop as an audience member a relationship with the main character. And by the end of it, once you understand her past, once you understand her traumas, her addictions, her mistakes, everything that she's ever been through, it becomes a little bit more frustrating and heartbreaking as you see everything kind of like just crash down on her. And man,
Yeah.
the character is put through the ringer in this movie. There's so many ridiculous things that she has to put up with. Uh, but she carries the movie. Very strong performance. And like you said, um, Trap, which I actually did enjoy. I did enjoy it for what it is. It's kind of
Yeah.
ridiculous and it's not a believable premise at all. But this is a much more convincing portrayal of a global pop star than what Trap was doing. And what's funny is that this is a more convincing movie, even though the premise of this is a lot more outlandish than Trap is.
Yeah, exactly.
Trap is not about anything supernatural. It is just about a serial killer. So by all means, it should be the more realistic tomb, the more realistic movie. This one is a much more far outlandish, and yet it has a much more convincing sense of realism than the movie that doesn't have any supernatural elements to it.
Yeah,
So
how is this wild movie more grounded than Trap?
I don't know because M Night Shyamalan is he's lost his mind a little bit. But I did enjoy Trap for what it is. That's another one we should talk about another time. But that's like a movie that you have to accept that its premise is ridiculous from the get go.
Yeah.
If you don't accept that, then you're not going to jive with the movie. But if you can accept that this is a ridiculous premise, it's kind of fun.
And also, the Smile director learned that you don't have to put a filter on these people's faces to make them scary. You can just have actors putting on a creepy smile, and it's enough. That the first one looked like Snapchat filters.
Yes, it did. I mean, it's also the first one was a big success, so I imagine the studio was willing to give a little bit. This is obviously a bigger budget film than the original
Yeah.
Smile is, much more conceptually ambitious film. And this is one of those cases where that extra studio money actually really paid off, and you could see the difference in terms of quality and ambition, in terms of what the director of what Parker Finn was able to pull off the second time around.
I'm really proud of that director for what he did with this. Now I'm excited to see what he does next. Smile, I wasn't so excited to see what he did next, but now I am. I really like when a director improves on his own work like that.
So am I, and I wouldn't mind a Smile 3 now. Strangely enough, I never
Yeah,
thought I'd be saying that.
yeah, he actually built a world that I like being in this time,
Mm-hmm. Very convincing
as
too.
as as weird and creepy as it was.
Yep. So that is my number 11, Smile.
So that brings us to my number 10, another one that was in your honorable mentions, The Coffee Table from Spain. Let me see if I can get this director. It's written and directed by Calle Casas. I think that's right, Calle Casas. It's co-written by Cristina Barobia, and they collaborated on a movie Killing God in 2017, which I need to see now after seeing this one. And it's weirdly listed as a comedy, drama, horror on IMDb. It had some really offbeat comedy in it, I guess,
Mhm.
but the scene was funny, and it was funny to the character. But knowing the implications of what was going on, it was not funny to the viewer. So I don't understand how it was listed as a comedy. But anyway, uh,
I have more to
David,
say about that later because I have the same
okay,
feeling that you do.
and David Pareja plays Jesus, and Estefania de los Santos as Maria, the wife. The synopsis is Jesus and Maria are a couple who have just become parents, and they decide to buy a new coffee table, a decision that will change their existence. And boy, does it. It was shot in just 10 days, which I can't believe is really excellent film. Uh, Tension is off the charts, just ridiculous amount of tension, and it's emotionally charged tension is what makes it so hard to watch. And I thought this quote from the director was perfect. Here's what the director said. He was asked about the audience, the intended effect of the movie on the audience, and he said, I would like them to never forget the experience, for better or worse. And as I mentioned, I would also want them to see how fragile we all are, to see that at any moment our life can break like irreparable glass. I would also like to think audiences will talk about the film as I don't think they will have seen many films like The Coffee Table. Yes, it's cruel and it's a hard viewing experience, but I hope one that you can also laugh at. I'm confident in saying it is unforgettable, and I hope the North American public will be shocked. This is a production shot in just 10 days at a friend's house with very little money, but it will hit home, achieving hey, honey, achieving an enormous emotional response in everyone who sees it. Don't you think? Yes, I do think. It was a visceral emotional response for me, and it'd be a big spoiler to say exactly what the
Don't say
emotional
it.
response was responding to, but holy hell.
I think what makes this interesting is when I put this movie on, The Coffee Table, I had certain expectations of it. I thought this was going to be about a haunted coffee table. I thought this
Yeah.
is one of those like low budget horror movies with the ridiculous premise where like, okay, this should be fun or could it be interesting? And then when you realize what the movie is, it's not that at all, not even close. It's something of a lot more emotionally disturbing than that. It's extremely realistic. There's nothing about this movie that is it's grounded in every single way. There's nothing about this movie that is remotely far-fetched. Literally
Mm-mm.
every like the director said like this could happen to you. Literally everything that happens in this movie could happen to anybody at any moment, and I think that's what kind of brings to the adds to the uncomfortable quality that this movie has. And as for the comedy thing, there's like one or two scenes that gave me uncomfortable or awkward laughter where I laughed a little bit, but it was more out of like how uncomfortable it made me than how funny it was. I saw it listed as a comedy too, and then I read some reviews on Letterboxd. Apparently, a lot of people do think this is a very funny movie. A lot of people do get the humor, and I could see that, but I think I was so disturbed by what was actually going on that I had a hard time while I was watching engaging with the I guess the humorous aspects of it. And I have a pretty fucked up sense of humor. I like dark humor. Even I had a hard time laughing at a lot of what was going on in this movie. Very yeah, Beals was like a type of horror that's a little bit taboo. It would make most people uncomfortable. Very shocking movie, I will say that.
Yeah, and when I would start to chuckle, my emotions would like cut off my chuckle. You know, I'd realize the implications of what I was laughing at because let's face it, the wife in this movie is a little much. she's she's a little hard to handle, a little overbearing, and then she just laughing in this guy's face and mocking him, and she is just so gleefully having such a great time you can't help but laugh. But then you realize the implications of what she doesn't know in that scene. That's what makes it devastating, because in the same scene I chuckled and then I felt such a sinking feeling in my stomach at the same time. I've never felt a feeling like that before.
I was hoping this was like a dream halfway through. I'm like, I know that would
Yeah.
be cheap, like to like say that this isn't real, but it's such an awful scenario that I was half hoping that like maybe it's not real, maybe this isn't actually happening. But like, no, the movie sticks with it all the way to the end, and it's
And
more powerful for it, I think.
you're faced with an awful, horribly tense situation, and then they keep putting layers of tension over it, like the little girl coming to the door accusing the guy of things.
I couldn't.
It's just don't you have enough tension already? Jeez.
Rarely have I ever been as irritated by a little kid in a movie as I was on the coffee table.
Yes, I wanted to slap her so bad.
I didn't want to say that. That's exactly what I was gonna do, but I'm sorry. I'm sorry, listener. The truth is, there are several points in that movie where I wanted to reach through the screen and smack the shit out of that little kid. So
And
damn annoying and does the worst possible things at the worst possible times.
yeah, she shows up at exactly the worst time she could possibly show up.
Oh my god.
And
Yeah.
then when she's devastated as well, you say, "Hey, see, you
And then
ornery
when
little
she gets her
cuss."
little when she gets her little trauma, when she realizes what's going on, that little girl is traumatized. I didn't even feel bad for him. Like that's what you get, you little brat, for sticking your nose in the situation. You will now be scarred for life.
And see, I can laugh about it afterwards, but I could not laugh like this when it was going on.
Yeah, it's one of those movies I think you see the comedy more. Well, not everybody. A lot of people do think it's funny while they're watching it, but I think you can see the comedy more once you've had more distance from the movie.
Yeah, if you like really off the charts tension, watch the coffee table. You never seen anything like it, guaranteed.
So my number 10, kicking into the top 10 now, is Terrifier 3, directed by Damien Leone. And if In a Violent Nature is what happens when you try to do something interesting, with a something interesting, or what you might term elevated. I hate that term, but whatever. Elevated house kind of approach to a slasher movie.
Yeah.
Terrifier 3 is what happens when you don't want to parody the genre. You just want to embrace everything that makes it such a kick-ass genre, that makes it so fun, and it is just a blast from start to finish. And that's saying something because it's pretty long for a slasher movie. What I liked about Terrifier 3, I don't really think there's any need to go into the premise. It's about Art the Clown. He's coming back. Um, I have a weakness for Christmas horror. Uh, I I don't know what it is about Christmas horror movies, but Christmas horror always seems to me much more cruel and harsh than horror movies that take place on Halloween, because Halloween is already associated with horror movies. It's associated with a certain sense of theatricality, of gothicness, of people dressed as ghosts and goblins and serial killers and movie villains and slasher villains and vampires and werewolves. So all of the iconography of Halloween makes a horror movie set during that time feel like a natural fit. Christmas, on the other hand, is supposed to be a joyful time of the year. Its aesthetic is much brighter. It's based on, well, there's debates about it. There's very capitalist, consumerist things about Christmas in terms of how our culture handles it. But it is supposed to be about coming together during the holidays, beneath all the money spending and all the consumerism of Christmas. There's something sweet about it. I personally have fond memories of Christmas, and there's just something really disturbing about seeing slasher movies specifically set around the Christmas time to a Christmas aesthetic, and especially a character as depraved and as gleefully fucking horrific as Art the Clown, dressed as a Santa killer, um, terrifying children. This is one of those slasher movies that kind of caught me off guard in a different way than In a Violent Nature. This one, I don't know if this is gorier than Terrifier 2 and 3. I think after a certain point, it's kind of hard to measure. Is this actually gorier than the last one? Because you reach a certain level. What I thought was separated this from Terrifier 2 and 3 is I thought this was an even crueler movie than the first two Terrifiers. And I think
Yeah.
it's because there's a level of added glee to Art the Clown, to David Howard Thornton's performance. I feel like he really goes for it and adds new layers to the character. and he makes him funnier. So there's a lot more laughs that you get out of Art the Clown than you did the first two movies. But that simultaneously makes it a little more disturbing because the things that he's doing are sick and depraved and absolutely wrong. And this is one of those movies, and spoiler alert, they kill children in this movie, and they kill more than one
Yeah.
child. There are several children that are killed in this movie, and that's a very big taboo. And like when it actually happens, I actually like covered my mouth in the movie theater. I was like, oh my god, like they really didn't give a fuck. They were like really pushing
Even
taboos and boundaries with this one. So
even
this is one where
multiple at the same time in one scene.
yeah, yeah, I was like, wow, this movie really went for it, and it was fun to see because I confirm I saw this with a packed audience. There were people walking out of the movie. It was too much for some people. But there's just something about the beautiful Christmas aesthetic that just melts so well with horror that I just think it just produces these really cruel films. So this is simultaneously the funniest of the Terrifier movies, and I also think it's the most disturbing of them because it's so gleeful and because it's such a holiday film and because Christmas is plastered everywhere. I really, really enjoyed it a lot.
And the Christmas part of it was especially beautiful because the set designer is Olga Turka. She
Mhm.
does the set and the costumes, and it was just beautiful, aesthetically pleasing Christmas decorations. Now it of course made me think of Silent Night, Deadly Night, which
Yeah.
I think feels Silent Night, Deadly Night feels more cruel to me. And I was thinking, why does it feel more cruel to me? This one is just as cruel, and it's got three times more kills. It's debatable whether it has more gore or not, but it definitely has a lot more kills. But it feels nasty in that way. But it's Art the Clown's performance because David Howard Thornton reminds me of Harpo Marx in this one. If anybody that knows me knows that I love the Marx Brothers and I love Harpo Marx, and he reminded me so much of Harpo Marx in this one. And to see a character like that just gleefully rip people apart, it's kind of disturbing. But it's also like I would feel guilty about laughing, but then I would just continue to laugh my ass off in the theater. It was just so funny.
Oh yeah, he's great. And I think amidst all, and this is a pretty insane movie. As anybody already knows, the Terrifier movies are pretty wild and they're pretty insane. But what I think stands out, especially about 2 and 3, is Lauren Rivera's performance. She's not playing this like she's in a fun, depraved slasher movie. She is like very much like fighting with her heart. Her performance is a very strong performance, and I liked her a lot in Terrifier 2. I already thought we got a badass new final girl, like a new horror icon on the more heroic side of things. I thought her performance was even better in this one. I think there's like a moment that I felt like I felt such despair where she's tied up at the end and like she's crying and like screaming like leave her alone, you sick people. She's just a child, like he's like begging. There's like a lot of real emotion there, and you could feel her anger and you could feel her desperation, and she gets a lot more abuse in this movie than she did the first. She's still badass, but she comes across a lot more vulnerable than she did in Terrifier 2 because this one she's coming off of a lot of traumas. She comes across a lot more damaged and unstable. And Art the Clown gets a lot more on her, I think, this time around. And I think that's what makes like the final battle in Terrifier 3 have such power to it, is like you really feel the struggle. It's after she's been brutalized, beaten, fucked up. She comes back at the end, and it's like one of those things where you're just cheering her on when she finally strikes back and starts like really fighting with Art the Clown. These movies have the strong, arguably some of like the strongest final girl sequences we've ever seen in slasher movies, and it's because Lauren Rivera brings like a physicality to it, a certain type of emotion to it that's very convincing. She really brings a level of realism to a very heightened, bizarre, unrealistic scenario. And I think she takes all of the craziness of the Terrifier movies, all of the insanity of David Howard Thornton's performance, all the craziness of of Damien Leone's relentless glee, relentless gore, and her performance takes all of the things that like it would still be enjoyable and it would still be a lot of fun without her, but it takes all of that and drags it all down to the real world and manage to sell things that are really over the top and really kind of hard to buy and makes them feel real, makes them feel grounded, makes them feel very palpable. And I think that she has become these movies secret weapons. I think she's a big part of what makes these movies gives the Terrifier films that extra oomph is Lauren Rivera's performances.
Yeah, she became a world class final girl that's up there with the best of them in just two movies.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's her seriousness and her acting skills, the way she takes it so seriously, is a great juxtaposition to David Howard Thornton's wild zaniness.
And I think sometimes the things that they're doing that like that, especially in the scene that I was talking about where she's crying and begging, I think Art the Clown does arguably some of the cruelest, meanest things he's done on screen so far, which is kind of saying a lot considering all the depravity that has happened in Terrifier and Terrifier 2. And it's so over the top that it leaves you a little dazed while you're watching. You're like, holy shit, that like it almost doesn't seem real. And it like it doesn't take you out of it, but you're like, okay, this is really over the top. And then bam, she comes in begging and crying and it drags it back down. You realize that, holy crap, what's actually happening on screen? If you were in that position, it is the most sickening, nightmarish thing that you could ever imagine happening to you in your life. And she really sells the emotion of that. She makes you feel that the very heightened, over the top stuff is actually happening right now, and kind of like drives the horror home.
Well, there was one crucial moment where I was taken out of the movie. It kind of it didn't fully mess up the experience. It kind of derailed my experience at the time because I was so enjoying Sienna's story building up to, and you know it was building up to a big climax. So you're watching Sienna's story, and the whole time it keeps cutting to uh, Art the Clown's antics, and you see that they're kind of careening toward this big climax at the end. But then when it gets to the climax, it kind of skips over a couple deaths, a couple important deaths. So because it skipped over those deaths, I thought she was asleep through part of the climax. I thought she was having a nightmare. So it kind of messed up the climax for me, but that's only a complaint because the rest of the movie had me so engaged.
That's interesting because I think I know what part of the movie you're talking about. There's a part where the movie's moving towards the climax, and I think I caught onto it right away that I just kind of was able to. A lot of people, you're not the only one. People have told me that they thought it was a dream and that it was still going on. And it takes, and if you believe that that part's a dream and it keeps going on, it takes a while before you realize, like, wait, this isn't a dream. This is actually this is actually the real climax of the movie. I
Yeah.
caught on to that very quick. I was like, oh, this is the real climax. This is not a dream. But if you're still sitting there waiting for her to like wake up and you realize, I could see how it might throw you off a little bit. But I think on if like when you watch it again, you might have a different experience with it because you already know what it's building to.
Yeah. And when it's heading toward the climax, like at that moment, I couldn't understand why they said, just go up and take a nap. You know, like we're just gearing up for the climax. What are you telling her to go take a nap for?
Yeah. And one last thing, I do think this has the best opening sequence of the Terrifier movies.
Yeah.
Easily the best opening sequence of the Terrifier movies. And I think it's going to become and I think that was the goal. I think they did set out to make like a Christmas horror classic, something that's going to be rewatched annually. And I think that as we're going to see it as the years go by, I think this is going to become like a Christmas horror staple for a lot of horror fans in the same way that Black Christmas or Silent Night, Deadly Night or Christmas Evil is. So I could see it come kind of like taking its place in the pantheon of Christmas horror classics.
And I love how Damien Leone stuck to his guns. Like after the success of Terrifier 2, he had so many big studios clamoring for this, and they said, "But you have to change the script. You have to tone it down." And some of them he turned down just because he said that they're going to make me change that opening scene, so I'm not even going to entertain this offer.
See, and that opening scene is what sets the tone for it.
Yeah,
It's like that's what gets you into the movie, and I think it's one of the best opening scenes in any slasher movie I could think of. And yeah, the studio would have butchered it. They would not have understood. And you know, a lot of people did walk out during the opening scene, and I think that's what's
yeah,
interesting is that it's drawing such a big, massive audience of people who are very curious, what you would term normies, people who might watch horror movies from time to time, but it's not a regular thing. These movies go a lot further than your average horror movie. They're not soft, they are for hardened horror movie fans. So it's always interesting because I've seen 2 and 3 in theaters, and both times I saw them with packed audiences, and each time I always see people walking out. It's always fun to see like the regular mainstream members of the audience not know what they just signed up for and not know what they're getting into, but it's like very obvious. There's always like at least 20 people who are out of the theater before the movie's over.
And normally, I wouldn't like to see such a beloved, low budget grindhouse feel of a franchise to go polished and bigger budget like this. But it works so well in this one because you love seeing your beloved franchise and your beloved Art the Clown with this polish and so many great supporting actors, and everyone could act and everyone was uh, committed to the story. So it was great to see that because Damon Leone didn't hold back on the other elements of the story. Because usually when you see a high gloss like that, it means that filmmaker is going to have to hold back because he wants to reach a bigger audience. But no, he didn't hold back.
No, I think
except for those 2 kills that they skipped over. I think he held back on those.
that's because the audience is a little, it might have scarred some members of the audience.
Yeah.
But it's one of those movies where it has a bigger budget, but I don't think it goes towards like polishing it up per se. I mean, I'm kind of contradicting myself because it does, but I think most of that budget goes towards that Christmas aesthetic. The malls, the Santa Clauses, the red, the Christmas trees everywhere. Um, yeah, I think you could see where the money went, but it doesn't feel like it went to it retains all of the gnarly down to the earth, the more of the less mainstream friendly elements of the Terrifier franchise are none of them are compromised. It's just used to accomplish a much better Christmas aesthetic.
And because there were so many kills, I mean, Damien Leone couldn't handle that load, so they had a whole team of makeup artists instead of just Damien Leone, like on part 1 and 2. So normally I wouldn't like that, but it seems to be a pretty seamless transition, as good as those effects were. I didn't see a big difference, like they were less authentic than Damien Leone's. I thought they were pretty close to his work.
Mm-hmm.
But it was
I didn't know that there were actually other effects artists. I kind of has the feel of of all of Damien Leone's work, but it makes sense because there's a lot of gore in this movie, like a
yeah,
lot, a lot, a lot.
it was actually 2 teams of makeup artists, and the main makeup effects designer was John Caglione Jr., and he goes all the way to back to Basket Case. He did Chud, Manhunter, Poltergeist 3, The Blob, Dick Tracy, Chaplin, Heat, Donnie Brasco, The Sopranos, The Departed, and he was most famous for doing Heath Ledger's makeup on The Dark Knight.
Dude, that's a fucking resume right there.
Hell yeah.
Like if you list all of the things, that's a dazzling resume right there, and that just shows you how far this franchise has come. I believe the first one, I could be wrong, but it was like a $35,000 budget, and
Yeah.
now you get makeup artists on Terrifier 3 that have done spectacular work on movies like worked on The Sopranos, worked on The Dark Knight, and it brings those mainstream that mainstream talent without compromising the X-rated feeling of the Terrifier franchise, without gussing it up for mainstream audiences or prettying it up or trying to make it more appealing. In fact, I think the fact that it's so uncompromising and it doesn't try to appease mainstream audiences only gives it a bigger audience. It's one of those things that like people like taboos. When you feel like you shouldn't be watching something, that draws more people in. And funny enough, I actually think it's unwillingness to compromise to mainstream expectations is only making it more mainstream because it's a niche that's not being fulfilled in the mainstream.
And by the way, it was still a low budget movie by Hollywood standards. It was only $2 million, which is pretty low budget. Like The Conjuring was $20 million, so that shows you how low budget this one is. But man, did it look higher budget, and it made 90 million, which is really impressive.
90 million off a $2 million budget, off an unrated horror movie.
Yeah,
That's really fucking impressive.
And one and two had like a 5 to 10 person crew. This one had dozens.
Well, I think they spent the money well on this one.
Excellent use of the budget. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that is my number 10, Terrifier 3.
So that brings us to my number nine, which is another one that was on your honorable mentions list. My number nine is Cuckoo, written and
I'm
directed by
surprised you
the.
liked it that much, Michael. I really am. Like I'm kind of surprised.
I I was gleefully loved it when I first watched it, and then I thought about it more afterwards, and I started liking it more. And then I watched it a second time, and I loved it even more. It's written and directed by Tillman Singer, who, like you said, directed Lose, starring Hunter Schafer from Euphoria, and she takes her teen angst. She's specializes in teen angst. If you ever seen Euphoria, and she takes it to another level on this one.
Yeah.
And it has Jan Bluthart from Loose as Henry, and the great Dan Stevens, as I mentioned, from Abigail. He was in The Guest, The Apostle, The Rental, and the show Legion. He plays Herr Kong. The synopsis is 17-year-old Gretchen reluctantly leaves America to live with her father at a resort in the German Alps. Plagued by strange noises and bloody visions, she soon discovers a shocking secret that concerns her own family. And isn't this kind of a folk horror movie with all the folklore behind it and the whole history of the creature and everything?
I didn't think of it as a folk horror movie, but it definitely kind of does fit within that mold.
Yeah, it has some of the elements of folk horror. It just didn't feel folk horror. It had its own vibe for me. Um, and I love the jump scare on the bike. It's one of the greatest jump scares I've seen in the last few years, where
That
she's
one was
riding on the bike
really
and she sees the shadow of something running up behind her. Oh, that's creepy as hell. But that was done in one night in only 4.5 hours, shot practically in camera.
good.
So it was really impressive. And it's named Cuckoo because of the bird that places its young in other nests so the other birds can raise them. Thought that was a clever title. And this was not nearly as strange as Lose, and wasn't nearly as strange as a lot of people were saying it was. The creature, the main villain, it is strange. Its habits are strange, but other than that, I don't think it was a strange movie. It was very linear, easy to follow story. It just had strange elements in the character of the villain, which I love the look of the villain. Why was it so creepy?
You know what I think when people have it and why people call it strange, even though it's not as strange as it seems, is it's Tillman Singer's directorial style. He has a very off-kilter, strange, like even when nothing surreal is going on, he makes it feel like it's vaguely surreal. Between this and Loose, you could really tell that that's a director that completely has his own vibe going for it, something completely unique.
And in both Lose and this one, you feel like it's a director that's completely in command of his vision. Like
Mhm.
you know, with this director on both of his movies, you know that what you're watching is exactly how he envisioned it. That's what I felt watching both of these movies. And which is strange to me because this one is so much different than Lose, isn't it?
Yeah, it's way different. I don't think it has nearly the same sense of surrealism. And I think in comparison to Loose, Loose is a movie that's very hard to like figure out. And even when you do figure out, it's debatable whether or not that interpretation actually is real.
Yeah.
Where they both are movies that kind of get by on their vibe and the experience of it. But this one yokes that vibe to a much easier to follow storyline than Loose is. But you know what? It definitely does feel like the same director. It has his directorial stamp. He has I wouldn't for lack of a better word, there's something Lynchian about it.
Yeah.
He has I don't know how to put it, but he has one of those unique voices in filmmaking that you can't imitate. Like when you see, just based on these two movies alone, you already could see that this director has a very developed style that you can instantly recognize what his work is or what it looks like. But there's something very, very unique to the way that he puts together his movies. They don't feel like anything else out there.
And the mystery behind the villain and the villain itself kind of felt like Lose. It kind of had that strangeness there. I love how you slowly figure out what the villain is all about through the whole thing.
And doesn't this like have like a good action movie shootout at the end of it where like
Oh yeah,
you could have put this in any action movie and this would have been a satisfying finale for an action movie.
yeah. And I love the music too. I was actually surprised when I looked up the music. I love the music. I love the placement of it. I think it was spot on. Every time the music came in, uh, was perfect for that moment in the story. And it's music by director Tillman Singer himself. And he threw some Beethoven in there. He put threw this band Pray for Rain, but a lot of it was him.
Really?
That song that Hunter Schafer sings on there, that was a Tillman Singer song. I
Yeah.
was really impressed with the music. Dan Stevens, what is it about this guy? Both in this and Abigail, he was almost a caricature. He was really hamming it up for the camera, but it worked in both movies. How is this guy able to be so hammy and so good? I don't get it.
Because he's convincing. He's very I don't know how to put it, but for it might be a weird comparison, but it's like Jack Nicholson in The Shining.
Uh,
Jack Nicholson in The Shining is very hammy and he's very campy and he's very over the top. But I think what makes a character like his character and Dan Stevens' character so terrifying is they're both hammy, they're both over the top, and they're both like really theatrical in a way that would normally undercut the seriousness of the movie. But what makes them scary is that they're almost cartoonishly evil,
yeah.
and it's that you could tell that they actually buy into it. They're cartoonish, over the top evil. That would be scary to encounter to somebody who is so evil that it's so that it almost comes across as a caricature. But you could tell that this person is like this is like a parody, but he really is this evil. That's what makes
Yeah.
it terrifying is that they commit to the campiness in a point where it's not just campy for the sake of campy. It's campy in a way that's terrifying because these characters really are that fucked up and they're really that evil.
And he's an actor I always like seeing him in anything.
Yeah,
Ever since I saw him in Legion, that's an actor to watch, I think. And
Legion.
oh yeah, and this one, even though it was like I said, it was pretty straightforward. There's still some freaky moments that I loved. The violence hurt every time, especially when Hunter Schafer was caught up in the violence. It really hurt. It like the way it was filmed, it high impact violence for me, and I felt nervous for Hunter the entire film. I was so afraid she was going to get hurt. But I like the look of the film. I love how the story played out. It was an all around great experience for me and kept me captivated from the first scene to the last. So that's why it was my number 9.
So you've just convinced me. I only saw it once, and just so people know, this is how much I was anticipating it. It was coming around on my birthday, and that was actually my birthday film. Uh, that's a long story, Michael. Your car broke down on our way to go on his way to meet us to go see the movie, so Michael didn't get to see it with us. But
Yeah.
I chose this movie because it's my birthday film. Because Tillman Singer, because Loose is one of my favorite movies of this decade. Period. I just fucking loved it. That I was heavily anticipating Tillman Singer's next movie, and while I did really enjoy it, it did not have the same impact on me for Loose, where this didn't even make my top 10. Whereas Loose was my number one film of the year that came out in 2019, my number one horror movie. So I want to watch it again now that I've had. It could have been just that I had anticipated it so strongly and I had such expectations that there comes a point where you, as a person or as a viewer, you can set expectations that are unrealistic, that it kind of like impairs your ability to kind of enjoy a movie for what it actually is instead of what you expect it to be. And I think I had built it up into my head too much that this is going to be like Loose 2.0, and it's definitely not that. Watching it again, I probably am going to have a different reaction to it. You probably didn't have the same expectations as I did, so you were probably able to like appreciate it a little more for what it actually was than I did.
Well, I saw right away, like less than halfway through it, that it doesn't have a lot of what makes Loose great. It has a whole other set of things that makes it great for me.
but it still feels like the
So
same. Yeah.
yeah. So once I seen it was going to be totally different in the way it played out, and so much more linear and so much more easy to follow. I kind of accepted it was going to be different from Lose, even though it still felt like the same director.
Yep. Good choice, Michael. Good choice. My number 9 film is Maxine from director Ty West, the conclusion to the X trilogy. And this
This
was,
one,
yeah.
this one is higher on my list. So you just want
All right. Okay.
to do
Yeah.
a brief.
Okay, Maxine, just the synopsis. In 1980s Hollywood, adult film star and aspiring actress Maxine Minks finally gets her big break. But as a mysterious killer stalks the starlets of Hollywood, a trail of blood threatens to reveal her sinister past. We'll talk a
That
little bit.
one's what? Yeah,
You,
that one's way high on my list.
okay, cool, cool. So, what is your number 9 then, Mr. Michael?
Oh, the last one was my number. Cuckoo was my number 9, so we're to my number
Oh,
8.
what is your number 8? My
This is Late Night with the Devil.
Okay, so
Th-
just do a brief synopsis because that one's higher on my list.
okay, and this one went up quite a bit higher on my list after watching it a second time because I watched it one time and I had a problem with it. I was expecting something more like Ghost Watch.
Hmm.
So the on the second watch, I didn't have any of the problems I did on the first watch, and I seen the genius of it and how effective it was, and how my own expectations kind of clouded my experience of it. So I'd say it's written and directed by Colin and Cameron Cairns. It's their third feature. They did 100 Bloody Acres back in 2012. It stars David Dasmalkian. We might know him from Oppenheimer, Suicide Squad, The Belko Experiment, and The Boogeyman, which is a good horror film from last year. Laura Gordon from Saw 5. Ian Bliss as the skeptic. Carmichael Haig, he's from The Matrix. Faisal Bazi as Christu. Rice Alteri as Gus the sidekick. This was his first film. And Ingrid Torelli as Lily. Excellent performance from her. So, since we're going to discuss it later, I just have a couple facts about it. They had 20 days in the studio and filmed it like a TV show with 3 cameras. Uh, the whole controversy over it being making $666,666 on the first Sunday after it's released. It's kind of bogus because they can kind of alter the numbers by like 5%. So the studio made it that much so that it boosts the marketing, but and it was a victim of the Fangoria scandal of 2020. Coincidentally, it was an article in Fangoria from David Dasmalkian about horror hosts that got him the part. So that was a weird coincidence. So this was supposed to come to us back in 2020, but because of the whole Fangoria scandal, we had to wait till 2024. Also, a little bit of a scandal with this that there was AI used in it, which
Hmm.
it was just 3 title cards were made with AI. And it was such a good movie that the controversy rose a little bit and then was just squashed right down because everybody loved the movie so much. Um, and the plot is based, like I said, on Ghost Watch, but also based on Network from 1976. Excellent movie. That's my number 8. So we'll discuss it more when it's higher on your list.
Okay, so my number 8 is one of the 2 movies. I'd say there's 2 movies on this list that really took me off guard. That like, when we're putting together these lists, you're looking for like all the good horror movies of 2024 and seeing what and you might think you might like it, you might not like it, but there are rarely times that I've ever this pleasantly surprised by a movie. Is my number 8 is Milk and Cereal, directed by
Uh,
Curry Barker. A surprise birthday party prank takes a turn for the worse when a popular social media duo must face the reality of the terrifying aftermath. Okay, this movie really knocked my socks off. I have to say, it is only an hour long. It's available on YouTube, so anybody could watch it easily. Um, this crew right here, led by Curry Barker, they actually do. I really need to delve in and like see more of their work, but they do a lot of these staged pranks and a lot of like short films and a lot of horror. So they already built up quite a following, and this. This is how you do a found footage movie. Like I said, only an hour long. It feels like there's a lot more plot to it, a lot more that goes into it than that. The found footage aspect is a more of a modern found footage film because it's about an internet channel where they do pranks. It gives this a level of realism, and this is a movie where there is constant twists and turns. It is upending your expectations all the way till the end. Everything about this feels extremely real. It's extremely disturbing because of the level of realism. It's one of those movies that you'd forget that you're even watching a movie. You feel like you are watching a sociopath who uploaded a video of their depraved workings to the internet. And man, I always thought like every time I thought the movie was going some one way, it did a complete left turn. And once I thought I got to handle it, it did another turn and another turn, all the way up until the end of the movie. It just it kept surprising me. Um, I can't really say too much about it because a lot of what makes it special is the twists and the turns that it takes. So I don't want to like spoil what actually happens in the movie. But holy fuck, it was a wild ride and I was truly blown away by it. I think this movie was made like I believe on an $800 budget or something like that. I'll check again.
Ridiculous amount, yeah.
Yeah, less than $1,000. And my God, this is inspiring. Like if you are on the indie horror scene or if you're into like, the more low budget filmmaking, this is a perfect example of how you can have practically no money and make something very special, very convincing just by using locations and places that you know. There's nothing about it that I found remotely unbelievable. There might be some plot holes here and there, but I'd probably have to watch it again to catch them just because I was so caught up in the story at the time. But I think that this is a very impressive piece of filmmaking. Yep, the film was filmed with an $800 budget. An impressive piece of filmmaking for a movie made under $1,000. And boy, does it blow away so many things that have triple, quadruple, like such larger budgets. Like there's like low budget, there's ultra low budget, and there's hardly like pennies. This scraps even the bottom of that. $800 for filmmaking is less than pennies. If anybody who's ever made a film or been involved in a film production knows that. So what they are able to pull off and how convincing it all is, incredible. Tension just through the roof the entire time, and it gave me a sense of dread through the whole runtime. And it felt longer than it was, but longer in a good way, not in a bad way. It felt longer than an hour just because I was like, holy crap, I can't believe they accomplished that much storytelling within that short amount of time. It is just economic filmmaking where not a beat is wasted, not a moment is wasted, just bam, 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 getting to the point. And it packs so much into an hour. And at the same time, what I'm describing makes it sound like it's paced at like breakneck, but it doesn't. It doesn't feel like the movie is ever in a rush to get to its point. It feels like it marinates in the tension, and it feels like it takes very careful steps to get to the points that it does, which makes it more impressive. So it's extremely short, that feels longer than it does, without ever feeling like it's in a rush. It feels very methodically paced in a good way. All of the performances are completely convincing. They're not performances that you think of like as like Oscar-worthy performances. What makes them great performances is how natural they are. They just seem like people that you might know or you might have met, friends who are kind of casual. Everything about it totally convinced me, had my heart racing, and just filled me with a sense of dread. I fucking loved it, dude. I thought this was so impressive, so blown away by what they achieved with this $800 budget.
Yeah,
Like, bravo! Like I
yeah.
like, literally wanted to applaud when it was over. It's like you just inspired me, and like you just showed what you can do with nothing.
Yeah, a good found footage film requires a different type of acting. Like you said, it takes a natural acting where it doesn't seem like you're never supposed to get a glimpse that someone is acting. It has to be 100% authentic. That's why some people think that found footage films are easier to make. They might be less time consuming or less expensive to make, but it's really difficult to make a really effective one because the acting has to be spot on every moment. There can't be one moment of bad acting that takes you out of it or it ruins the whole movie. And this one, everyone was natural, especially Corey Barker.
He's the director, and he's the fucking main character of Milk. God, he's scary.
Yeah. And when I watched it, I didn't actually know that they were YouTubers. I was wondering how they got the experience to be so good and make these videos look so authentic. It's because they've been YouTubers for so long and they're so used to this. So they took their own skills that they had already developed and turned it into a movie, and it's just perfection.
Oh yeah. Um, very DIY feel, very do it yourself. But yeah, it's one of those movies you can't elaborate too on because the joy of the movie is in the surprise. But this is one for anybody listening. If you haven't seen Milk and Cereal, just go on YouTube, look it up. Uh, I don't think you'll be disappointed by it. I don't think you'll be
And I've
disappointed
been
by it at all.
and I haven't got a chance to, but I've been told to watch all their other videos that they have some really good stuff up, have some good comedy stuff and some good horror shorts and stuff too. So I'm going to check out more of their stuff.
Definitely. And it's amazing that Curry Barker wrote, directed, and starred in it and gave a very authentic, convincing portrait of a certain type of personality.
Definitely. And the dynamic of the friends, it all seem real because they're all really friends. It's just so many things had to come together to make this as great as it was. It's not like a few friends just got together and decided to make a movie. They utilized the skills that they already had and made an excellent found footage film.
Yeah. Go watch it on YouTube. In fact, if you want to pause this podcast, pause it and go watch it now. Or when this is over, go look it up right away. I recommend this. It comes very highly recommended, and the fact that it's so easily accessible, you don't have to subscribe to anything or anything like that. Just click on YouTube and it's right there.
And it's huge in the found footage world. And in the found footage world, you get a lot of filler in there. So when you get a movie that's this good, it really shines. So I posted my review of this movie in a found footage horror group. I ended up getting like 2 million hits on my post. So found footage fans clamor for this thing. So if you like found footage films at all and you haven't seen this film, what are you waiting for? Like James said, pause the podcast and go watch it and
Yeah.
then come back to us.
And come back. But yeah, Milk and Cereal. Big shout out to that whole crew. God, you guys impressed me.
Yeah. Excellent found footage.
So what's your number? Who's next? It's you,
So
right?
yeah, I got my number 7. This you couldn't get any more opposite of Milk and Cereal from my number 7. It's Nosferatu.
I have that a little higher on my list, but go on. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just give the actors a synopsis and some info, and then we'll discuss it when it's on your list. So my number 7 is Nosferatu, written and directed, of course, by Robert Eggers. Who? What a filmography this guy has already! The Witch, The Lighthouse, The Northman. My God. And he's working on a film called Werewolf, and also rumored to be on a sequel of The Labyrinth. Starring Lily Rose Depp from Yoga Hosers, which is an awful movie. This is a big step up for her. Nicholas Hoult from About a Boy, Mad Max Fury Road, Warm Bodies, The Menu, and Renfield, another vampire movie. And of course, Bill Skarsgård as Nosferatu. He's in It, Barbarian, Villains, The Crow, and he started out in Hemlock Grove, where he played another vampire. Aaron Taylor Johnson, the guy from Kick-Ass. This guy just keeps getting great roles. He was in Kick-Ass, Nocturnal Animals, Bullet Train. He's pretty good in Fall Guy. And he was even good in Craven, even though Craven wasn't a great movie. And he's coming up in
Saw that?
28 years later. What's that?
You saw that movie?
Yes.
You're one of the few who braved it. Okay.
It was better than Morbius, but that's not saying a lot.
No, it's not.
And of course, Willem Dafoe, who's a legend. The synopsis is in the 1830s, estate agent Thomas Hutter travels to Transylvania for a fateful meeting with Count Orlok, a prospective client. In his absence, Hutler's new bride, Ellen, is left under the care of their friends, Frederick and Anne Harding. Plagued by horrific visions and an increasing sense of dread, Ellen soon encounters an evil force that's far beyond her control, which is a remake of Nosferatu, which is a telling of Bram Stoker's Dracula, as we know. It was nominated for 4 Oscars: makeup, cinematography, production design, and costumes. It deserved all those nominations, and it got the Oscar for Best Makeup. Oh no, no, it was nominated for all four, but didn't get any of those. That's
It
right.
lost to The Substance.
Yeah.
Another great
Uh,
movie.
Skarsgård worked for 6 weeks straight on The Voice, and warming up sounded like a Mongolian throat singing. So I'd like to hear him warm up. Uh, Eggers refused to use CGI snow, so he used frozen potato flakes. Nosferatu's look was a lot of people complained about the mustache, but it was derived from folklore and the culture of the region. I loved the way the night scenes looked. The night scenes were filmed during the day, and the red and yellow color spectra were removed. That's how they got that awesome blue looking color. I love the look of the night scenes in this one. Um, Eggers was very impressed with Lily Rose Depp's audition and called her a feral actor. I can see after her performance why he called her feral actor. Harry Styles and Anya Taylor-Joy were originally cast as the leads, which I don't think would have worked as well. The 5,000 real rats were that they used in this movie were well behaved, but they all peed on the set to mark their territory, so it really stunk. And in the scene with Willem Dafoe, there was 2,000 rats just in his scene. This one was projected to open at 25 million on Christmas Day, but it opened at 40 million, so it was a lot more successful than they thought. And Robert Eggers gave the prosthetic penis of Nosferatu to Nicholas Holt as a gift.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, more on that when we get it to. Okay.
So
So
that was my number 7.
my number seven, I have a feeling this might be higher on your list, so we might be skipping again. Strange Darling. I don't know.
Yes,
Is that higher on your list?
yes, that one's much higher on my list.
Okay. My number seven is Strange Darling, directed by J.T. Molnar. Nothing is what it seems when a twisted one night stand spirals into a serial killer's vicious murder spree. Willa Fitzgerald and Kyle Gallner are in this, and such amazing performances that really sell this. This is one of the best movies of the year, period, not just one of the best horror movies. And I'm going to stop in a second, but the only reason this is not higher on my list is because I try to balance this list by looking at it not just as a film, but as a horror movie. As a horror movie, there are horror movies that I think that are better than this, but as a film, it's better as just an overall film than some of the things that I put above it. But I'm trying to rank these as horror movies as opposed to film, which I consider a completely different thing. But more on that later when we talk about it.
And Kyle Gallner, who was just in that awesome scene, opening scene of Smile 2.
Yeah, so Kyle Gallner actually has two spots on my list right now. You're really killing it. He was also in Scream 5.
Yeah,
Yeah, Scream 5, so he's really killing it right now.
we got a Scream King brewing there.
Yep, new Scream King. So my number 11, Strange Darling, we'll talk about it a little bit more when we get back up to it.
Because you're number 7, you mean, right?
Yeah. That's
Okay.
yeah. My number 7, we'll talk about it a little bit more when we get it to higher on your list.
All right, and that brings us to my number 6, another one that was on your honorable mentions, Exhuma. This is another one I had to watch again. I just watched it again last night, and it was even better the second time. Um, like we said before, I love Korean horror, and this one was not any different. It was written and directed by Jang Jae Brun. This is his third feature. It's Korean folk horror starring Choi Min Sik from Old Boy and I Saw the Devil. I fucking love that guy. And Kim Go Yoon. She plays the shaman. She was a great performance from her. The synopsis is the process of excavating an ominous grave unleashes long hidden secrets and dreadful consequences buried underneath. My favorite thing about this movie was the rituals. The actors actually studied real shamanic rituals, and the lead actress who played the shaman was concerned with being possessed because of it. That's how authentic they were. And but there was a real shaman on set, so he assured her she wasn't going to be possessed. And somehow, I don't know how I didn't hear this in the theaters, but it grossed 93 million worldwide, which I see why because it's so well made. But
You know why you said worldwide, it might not have had that same impact like in North America. That's just like globally. I don't think here we heard as much about it.
that's true. And the star of it, Choi Min Sik, who plays the grave expert. I mean, can he do no wrong? Like Old Boy and I Saw the Devil were both masterpieces as far as I'm concerned. He just killed it in those, and he kills it in this one. I love the narration from both the leads, him and the shaman woman. The shaman woman and the grave expert. Uh, the shaman was helping people with haunted family members, and the grave expert was helping people in the same way, but by moving graves to a different spot. He was like a feng shui for graves. So I thought that was a really cool aspect of the story. Um, and of course, it reminded me of Pet Cemetery when they walk to this menacing grave that ends up being the big evil one. It's creepy ass woods right away. Like the director in this movie has a way of making woods in the bright daylight look scary as hell. So as soon as they entered these creepy ass woods, I knew something was gonna go awry. Um, the extraction ritual was the best one. So basically, when they go to these graves and dig them up, they have to do an extraction ritual to actually do pay the proper respect to the spirits. So the extraction ritual had these dead pigs to pull the evil from the ground. There was flags going around, these drums, and the shaman girl was doing this awesome chanting, and she went through these assorted knives and picks out the right knives for the ritual, and she starts dancing around with them, and she's cutting the pigs open. And so the pigs are all like, I think it's like six pigs in a row on spikes. So she's cutting the pigs open, and then she cuts herself, and then she cuts them some more, and then she gets down on the ground and starts this massive like intense head banging. Uh, it just gets more and more chaotic throughout the scene, and I think it works so well for the movie. And then one of my favorite parts is they're digging this grave up, and the part that really worked for me that got me fully invested in the movie is they're digging the grave, and one of the guys digging the grave sees a little worm snake looking thing crawling around in the grave, and it comes up out of the dirt and it has a human head on it, and the guy stomps on the head and it screams like a weird humanoid scream. And then when that scream rings out, everybody plugs their ears, and then black clouds roll in. I was like, holy shit, this thing feels huge. And then the part that reminded me of Lost Highway, when the guy was on the phone with the grave expert,
Mm-hmm.
and then he's talking to the grave expert on the phone, and then the grave expert, starts banging on the door, wanting him to let him in. So you don't know which
Which
is the evil. Is the evil on the phone or is it at the door? Fucking love that part. I love the part. I'd like to see a behind the scenes thing of how they did it when the entity or whatever it was possesses the guy and it twists his head around all the way back. So it twists his head around to face behind him, and then he falls down and smacks his head on the table. It looks so fucking real. Loved it. I loved how the entity turns into a fireball, starts flying all around the woods, and they picked an excellent location where the grave was. So it made it look even cooler to have a fireball flying above the trees. I'd love to know how they did that. Was it CGI? It didn't look CGI, but how did they get a big massive fireball to fly through the trees? I don't know. But it's so good. I love the mystery that was mixed with the folk horror and the supernatural elements, and it had characters that you cared about. I loved how you have both of these main characters narrating their own stories, and then the grave expert has his sidekick that he has a really realistic dynamic with, and it's always interesting their scenes together. And then also the shaman has a partner that she was with, and they have a good connection. And then they find this camaraderie throughout the movie. It really makes you care about their plight. All the way right up to the end, you get this warm feeling that about these people working together for a common cause, and they're so um, dedicated to not only doing their jobs but doing the right thing and stopping this massive entity. Like there's a giant samurai that's burnt that walks around killing people. There's just so many great things about this movie. That's why I had to put it at my number six.
It's a good choice. I really enjoyed this movie. Like I said, it's on my honorable mentions. Um, I guess the only thing was I thought I was gonna like it more than I ended up liking it, and I think I liked the first half of the movie more than I would say. It's not even just the first half; it's just the climax. and this is just like a personal thing. It has very much like a monster movie feel, and I feel by
Yeah.
that time a lot of what like the authenticity of it started to feel a little bit. It felt like it went too big. I don't know if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, it got big and fantastical toward the end for sure.
Yeah. Um, Whereas opposed to other South Korean horror movies like The Wailing and The Medium, which actually topped my list of the best horror movies of the year, came out. Um, I think those ones just creeped me out more. And like I said, I really liked this movie, but it didn't end up. I didn't end up loving it as much as I thought I was while I was watching it.
And I'm like you. I normally wouldn't like a movie like this to go as big and fantastical as it did at the end, but there were so many cool elements going on at the same time, and then the camaraderie of the main characters kind of kept me
Hmm.
grounded throughout the whole thing and kept me feeling everything that was going on. So
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is very good. It's very effective and it's very well made. But I feel like I kind of was enjoying the I don't know what the word is. Some of the more unknown elements that you don't see as much, like the creepy buildup. It just, for me, is just like to have that giant monster at the end kind of makes it seem a little bit. It has, I don't know how to describe it, like an action movie ending, but in a way that feels
yeah,
a little bit too much for my taste.
but just the fact that he had this giant samurai and then he possessed people and then he turned into a fireball, I
Yeah.
loved it.
And what's cool about a lot of South Korean horror is that which is much different culture for Eastern culture being so much different. It's a lot older than a country like the United States, and there's more of a sense of tradition, and there's a lot more sense of folklore in Eastern cultures, and they actually take the threats in these South Korean movies, and it's a product, a cultural product. They actually always take the threats very seriously. There aren't as many people as you see in American films who are very like the rational character who just doesn't believe in it because our culture doesn't really kind of prize that type of mysticism. Whereas when you see a South Korean movie like The Wailing or The Medium or Exuma like this one, when the horror comes, there's no logical person that's like, oh, this isn't real, or kind of like brushing it off. It is
Yeah,
part of the culture to take that seriously, and it gives it kind of a different spin on a lot of these fantastical ideas. It
and
just
you
so much differently than you would in an American movie.
yeah you can kind of skip past the skepticism and then characters running around trying to get people to believe them. They all believe it.
And I think it allows these movies to go a little bit bigger too,
Yeah,
because it doesn't spend as much time trying to convince the skeptics and thereby the audience sense what it's real. It could just jump into like, no, it's already real. It's established. Everybody believes in it. So let's check out all of these wild ass rituals that we have that we put together that are in store for it. So I think these movies get to the point faster.
yeah.
That's definitely one of the upticks of it. Good choice though.
Thank you.
So my number six, and I feel like we're gonna skip this again, is Long Legs.
My number five is long legs, so we can talk about it.
Okay, so my number six is Long Legs, and Michael's number five is Long Legs. So we'll just blend this together. Directed by Osgood Perkins, the son of Anthony Perkins, Norman Bates from Psycho, and I believe his mother is Marissa Berenson, who plays Lady Lyndon in Barry Lyndon. So he's got his parents are in some pretty masterful films,
Oh
like
yeah.
Hitchcock and Stanley Kubrick. Um, FBI agent Lee Harker is a gifted new recruit assigned to the unsolved case of an elusive serial killer. As the case takes complex turns, unearthing evidence of the occult, Harker discovers a personal connection to the merciless killer and must race against time to stop him before he claims the lives of another innocent family. Here's what's interesting about Long Legs to me, and I think it's a testament to how well directed it is and how utterly eerie and atmospheric it is and how gripping it is I think that this is a personal thing. I think the script of Long Legs is a little predictable, and I was kind of ahead of the movie, and I kind of knew where it was going, and I knew like certain twists that were going to happen. And yet, even as I was aware, even I was as I was aware of the script writing and the plot mechanisms, it is so utterly eerie in every frame. Osgood Perkins directs it like the movie is possessed with some kind of evil. And there is not one frame of the movie that I was uncomfortable in. So even when it was leading up to the elements that I knew that were going to happen, I still was creeped out by the plot twist that I predicted, by the things that I saw coming, didn't make it any less effective when those moments finally arrived because the direction of this is so utterly convincing. The lighting of it, the atmosphere, the utterly eerie feeling, all those very slow zoom ins, the close ups. Like this movie is dripping with directorial flair. Osgood Perkins directs the fuck out of this movie. There is not a single frame in this movie where I didn't feel deeply unnerved, deeply creeped out, and deeply uncomfortable. It's like a version of Seven or The Silence of the Lambs that commits to the horror elements more and is a little bit, it's like a more satanic version of Seven. Um Nicolas Cage's performance doesn't work for some people it does. I thought this role was absolutely perfect for him. He made me uncomfortable. One of the best opening sequences in horror movies in recent years.
Yeah.
Very eerie, just the cold sound, all of the performances, all of the performances in this movie, especially Micah Monroe, character who's very
Yes.
buttoned up, very kept to herself, very intelligent, very deceptively intelligent, and something unnatural and awkward about her, but she's so endearing at the same time, keeps the movie so grounded. And I think that this goes back to what I was talking about. I don't think the script really gives her enough, and yet it transcends that because of the performance. Whatever the script doesn't cover as far as the character, you feel like you know everything about her because of the way that Micah Monroe gives her performance. She adds so much there that isn't in the script, that's just in her performance, that you could feel her thoughts, you could feel what kind of person she is, you could sense some of her backstory. Even if you don't know her backstory, you know there's something very uncomfortable about it, and it becomes more interesting as it reveals more. But it's the performance and the direction that sold this movie for me and made it such a memorable experience. This is one of those movies that it's purely an experience, and even if you think it's predictable, I don't think it makes it any less effective. Uh, Impressive as hell, just from a directorial and acting point of view.
And Blair Underwood, his performance was great. And
Yeah, yeah.
his part was one of the scariest parts of the climax for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like once he starts acting weird, it sends a chill up my spine. And
He's always been the one who's grounding the movie, the most rational one, and he's
yeah,
like a calming, reassuring presence. And when that calming, reassuring presence disappears, you're like, oh, everything is fucked and everything is about to go completely wrong.
and by the way, I'm familiar with Blair Underwood from the show L.A. Law. I think he was on like 4 seasons of L.A. Law, and back in '86. How the hell does he still look like that when he was on L.A. Law playing a lawyer in '86?
How old is Blair Underwood?
He looks, I don't know, he looks like he hasn't aged a day, dude.
I remember him in Set It Off,
Yeah, yeah,
and God, he's so baby faced. And also, what really sold me on Blair Underwood as an actor is there's a show with Gabriel Byrne from Hereditary in Treatment, which
oh
was
yeah,
yeah, it's a show just about a therapist, and he played one of his patients, and God, like a really really strong performance. And that was, I believe, in 2010. He looks the same in there as he does looks in 96 and Set It Off, and he looks the same in 2024 in Long Legs, which is 14 years after in Treatment and decades removed from Set It Off, and he looks almost exactly the same. He's really aged.
yeah,
You're saying he's a lawyer in 86?
yeah. Make a movie about him not aging.
Very strange. Very strange. But yeah, he's one of the best perform. I mean, him and Micah Monroe are really great. But yeah, I thought this is just a fantastically directed movie.
And this was apparently Nicolas Cage's first and last time playing a serial killer. He said, and I thought Osgood Perkins found the perfect way to use Nicolas Cage. Take his already weirdness, his zaniness, and just kind of turn it into freakiness and weirdness.
Mm-hmm.
It was so Nicolas Cage, his performance, and the way he kind of pushed it to the boundaries of a believable performance. But it worked so well for that character. It made him seem kind of off, and dare I say it kind of made the supernatural elements because the way he acted was almost supernatural because that's just Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, that's
He's just that weird.
it's one of those cases where he came upon a role that plays into all of the Nicolas Cage cliches perfectly. That's almost suited for it. That almost like the things that like might be over the top and campy and ridiculous in another movie fit perfectly here. And what's crazy
Yeah,
is that the movie that it fits perfectly in is not a campy or zany movie. It is a deathly serious movie with a deathly serious vibe and a very uncomfortable atmosphere. And he's
yeah,
a serial killer. He comes across as genuinely disturbed, and I think his first appearance scares the shit out of me. Like it was like
yeah.
a very effective jump scare the first time that you actually see him, and especially the way that the music plays and everything, and his whole singing. Let me in now. I'm not going to start going into it, but
Yeah.
so quotable, so funny, funny but disturbing at the same time.
And the way it starts out, just showing him from here down, and it kind of dips into the camera just long enough and then cuts it away. It's creepy.
Yeah, you only see the bottom of his face. It's the framing. It's the like yeah. Osgood Perkins is definitely very I don't know how to put it like as a very distinct directorial style. And I think coming from Hollywood royalty and his parents being in such great films, I think he learned from the best.
And by the way, Micah Monroe's character was very Micah Monroe, very played to her strengths because she played like a character similar to the one she played in It Follows, where it's just kind of monotone, kind of doesn't show emotion, but she shows just enough, I think. But
This you could
it
read the
speaks,
emotion in her lack of emotion. Like
yeah.
she actually kind of conveys where like she's tight, she's buttoned up, and she's kind of like holding it in. But I think that's a sign of like really good acting. That even though she's not out, her emotions are not very outward and exterior. When you look into her face and you look into her eyes, you could see something going on there internally. A lot of it's very internal, and I don't think a lot of actors are capable of that. Most actors, when they want to like show their complexity, they have to put it all on the screen. She keeps it all behind her face, and even as she's withholding certain emotions, you could almost feel what she's feeling at the same time.
And did you hear that Melissa Barrera was originally going to be cast in her role? I can't imagine her there, but Melissa Barrera turned it down because of the satanic and supernatural elements. That seemed kind of strange.
Yeah, that is pretty strange. I mean, she did Abigail, but that's a vampire, so I guess that's different.
Yeah. And did you hear about the incident with Micah Monroe in the interrogation scene? Excellent scene, by the way, with Nicolas Cage, where she's alone in the room with Nicolas Cage, and she had never seen him before that on set. They deliberately kept her from seeing the way Cage was going to look in the makeup. So her for the frightened nature of her performance was real. And then the mic was close to her heart in that one, and it kept picked up her heartbeat, and it sped up like so many beats when she saw Nicolas Cage. And then they isolated the sound of her heartbeat and used it some of the the marketing, which I thought was genius.
Before you proceed, I want to make a quick correction before it goes on too long. Earlier, I said his parents are Anthony Perkins and Marissa Berenson. I made a mistake. His dad is Anthony Perkins. His mom is actually Barry Berenson, who is the sister of Marissa Berenson. So who I called his
Oh,
mom is actually his aunt. So she was
okay.
a sister. She was a model. And as a side note, she died in the September 11th attacks as a passenger on American Airlines flight one on American's airline flight 11. So she actually passed away
Wow.
in September 11th, one of the victims of the terrorist attacks.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. So correction, Marissa Berenson is his aunt. Still, that's still a high pedigree to be related to for
Yeah.
in terms of who your
Well,
family members have worked with.
let me ask you this. Another great performance in the movie was Alicia Witt as Micah Monroe's mother.
Oh yeah, she's really good.
So, without giving any spoilers, once all is said and done, is Alicia Witt's character evil or is she the ideal mother?
Hmm.
Because
Uh,
she does everything she does for her daughter.
I think she's both, and I think that's what makes it. I think that's what makes the performance actually creepy, and I think that's what makes it uncomfortable. Is I talked to my mom about the movie because my mom watched it separately from me. She said the mother was creepy, but she said she was able to predict the mother because she says from the point of view for because she was looking at as a mom, she was saying
Mm,
would have done the same thing for my kid if you know I'm like and so I think that's the complications of being a parent in a world that's as evil as it is. That you may have to do some very depraved things to protect your child. You may have to compromise yourself. So she simultaneously is the ideal parent and evil. But yeah,
yeah.
yeah. My mom told me that she would have done the same exact thing
Yeah.
with one of her kids.
And also, this movie was, like you say, how it was directed. Because
Yes,
it was heavy on the mood and really heavy on score. And dare I say, it relied on that a lot. But that's a good thing because it also had the satisfying story beats in there. Because
mhm.
if the story beats hadn't been so satisfying, then it would have been all mood, you know. But in between all that mood setting and the way it makes you feel, had some really interesting story beats throughout and really interesting performances by the whole cast.
Is weighted with dread through the entire time. And it's weird. This is a weird criticism of it, but I actually kind of understand what people mean by it. Is there's a common criticism that's going around. I don't agree with it, but I kind of see the point where some people have said it is so directed and it is so filled with portent and dread and so heavy and so suffused with it that they stopped buying it after a while, that they were able to see that like it's too directed. It's so directed that I'm constantly aware that the director is doing some very heavy effect to like induce this on me, where I've seen a couple people is like say it's so oppressive and heavy with dread that it almost became a parody to me because it's just loaded with it where people are like overwhelmed by it. I could kind of see that where I was like, it either works for you, doesn't, but I don't know. I like directorial style and I like,
Me too.
I'd rather have a director who's like utterly convinced of what he's doing and throwing everything at the wall than phoning it in any day of the week.
And I went to see this with the family in the theater with both of my kids, and both of my kids are pissed at me that this is so high on my list. They're like,
Again,
"Fuck long legs."
yeah, again, I think if, yeah, I think that if you rely just on the script, and I think it's not a bad script, it's a good script, but just based on the script alone, that's not what makes it such a powerful horror movie. It's the way that
and
it's made that makes it a powerful horror movie.
they thought it was so slow and that Nicolas Cage wasn't scary, he was just goofy. But if you imagine, if the director makes you imagine that that's a real guy, it'll freak you the fuck out.
If you encounter that in real life, I don't think you would think it's goofy.
And yeah, and I think it's the mood and the score and everything that makes you feel it kind of makes you forget that that's Nicolas Cage doing Nicolas Cage. You kind of it kind of puts you in the narrative. But I can see if you don't connect with what the director's doing and you're not inside that narrative, I can see how you could think that that's Nicolas Cage just being Nicolas Cage and being goofy. But
Definitely.
I loved it.